Hello and welcome to you. It's beautiful to be with each of you. And I'd like to just take a moment and thank you, just to thank you all for showing up and sharing your hearts with me in this way. And truly, if I reflect back to the beginning when I was teaching, things weren't so busy and there weren't so many people around. And sometimes I really struggled to just make ends meet. And so it's nice. It's nice having a song. It's nice to be able to meet with you all in this way. And I want to thank you for your support and your showing up and your willingness and all that you give. So truly from my heart to yours, I thank you and I bow deeply before you. Okay. I just wanted to start with that. And then there's two announcements. We have a retreat beginning next Friday, May 31st, 2024. So I hope you can join. If you need a scholarship, just let me know. And there'll be a weekend retreat and we'll be focusing on opening and receiving grace and developing a relationship between you and the divine. And I know often in the non-dual world, we try to bypass God. And that's okay, if you want to be a good Buddhist or student of Vedanta and just go directly to the recognition that you are God. But in order to realize that you are God, you have to fully let go of being human. Most of us have a very difficult time pulling that off. Most of us have human struggles in this world. And, if you have a friend, you have a friend in Jesus, if you have a friend in the divine, things can be much, much easier. And of course, you don't have to be friends with Jesus. I just heard that in a song today, that 60s song, A Spirit in the Sky, but I have found it so incredibly helpful to be able to call upon forces of grace to help my humanity navigate life here on planet Earth. For most of us, if we live long enough, we realize things get a little messy. Things get a little messy here on planet Earth. Okay. So yeah, we have two retreats. One this weekend, May 31st, and then next one coming up. It's an in-person retreat at Kripalu Yoga Institute in Massachusetts, and that's July 14th through the 19th. Okay. Let's do this. Let's close down our eyes. Let's open our hearts more fully. Giving ourselves permission to arrive here 100%. So any place in your body that is tight or tense, please relax that. Please let go. Just to build upon what I was speaking about a moment ago, I want to invite you all just to open your crown chakra, the space of the third eye, the throat, the heart, and just beginning to receive. It's a very gentle heavenly grace. That is pouring down into this room, pouring down into the body temple, pouring down into this vast space of awareness. Just like on a hot day, we happily receive a cool breeze. Can you join me in welcoming this gentle grace? welcoming the silence and the spaciousness of your being. Welcoming the gentle love and openness of your heart. And of course, if any of you, if you have a heavy heart, then now's a good time to let go, to soften, to forgive. And just to allow yourself to be gently supported. Gently supported. And so some of you are a little bit hunched over. I want to invite you to have a straight spine. If you like, have a straight spine. And just to receive this light. Receive this love. Receive this blessing of grace and this recognition of your true nature. The true nature of the mind is spacious, empty. True nature of the heart is radiant and loving. True nature of the heart is a depth of strength. Gentle yet humble power. So again, breathing, feeling, softening, opening to the depth of your being. And then again, the more you open, the more you can receive this gentle stream of grace. And so together, let us have just a sweet sense of gratitude, thanking the divine for showing up and being here with us, supporting us on the path. Supporting this process of healing, letting go of that which isn't ours, which is old and absolute and obsolete, and opening to that which is good and true and beautiful about your being. So we breathe, we feel, we soften, we let go into the depth of our true nature. And so I welcome you to Satsang. I welcome you into this moment. You can open your eyes if you like. If you like. Okay. I want to start with a question that Don sent in. I'm just going to read it here. Hi, Craig. On your website, you have a beautiful passage where you speak of talking to others. And yet, as you write, I feel as if I'm speaking to myself. And you continue, I love you so much. Your beauty is my beauty. I literally experience you as me as you. I wonder if you could say just a bit more about that way of being and perhaps how it has developed over the last few years since you wrote that passage? Yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful question. And I don't even remember writing that passage, but I can reflect upon it a little bit. There's this very basic teaching that I offer, and it's a very difficult teaching um, to take on, but the teaching nonetheless is very basic, and it's something that I discovered on the path that, well, one, if I just give a little bit of history, I'm going to give myself a gold star and say, like, I was pretty good at meditation when I was young. And one of the things that shocked me was, despite the fact of being pretty good at meditation, I could not maintain any of the states that are the experiences that I realized during meditation in my everyday life. And so I had to ask why, like what's the problem here? What's the problem? Like, what's going on with me that I'm so good on the cushion, and so I'm gonna be blunt here, so terrible off the cushion. In fact, I want to just tell you about, I went out yesterday and I shot my bow, and it's been a minute since I've shot my bow. Just I injured my arm, my shoulder, my elbow, my whole body. I injured my whole body at jujitsu, and so I had to put the bow down for a little bit. But I picked it up yesterday and I shot it. And the first shot I took, it's like boom, bullseye, hit the mark. It's like perfect shot. And I was like, all right, I still got it. I just shot, a couple quiverfuls of arrows, and was just on fire yesterday. And today I got my bow out, and I was wearing these big sunglasses. And ever since I got these sunglasses, I always thought there was something a little bit wrong with them, like the prescription is a little bit off or something. And like when you shoot a compound bow like I do, like you have to hit the target. And like around the target, I've got some hay bales, but my arrow will go right through a hay bale. That hay bale is just there to slow it down. But on the other side of that is my neighbor's fence, and he has it's like a Trex, and all are familiar with the Trex product. It's like plastic decking, but he has a plastic fence, a pretty thick one. I missed the target so bad today. Um, and I've never missed the target, like never in all my time of shooting bow. God, I shot my arrow right into his fence. I couldn't get it out. It's like I just did terrible. Some days we do really good on the path. We think we're hot stuff, and the next day we're just doing terrible. And I think many of us can relate to that. And so back to my story of being good at meditation, I realized, God, in life, I'm pretty bad at life. I'm pretty bad. Pretty bad. You should have seen me too, like just digging my arrow out of my neighbor's fence. Um, I had out like some channel locks and pliers. I broke my arrow in like 6 different pieces just trying to pull that thing out. Then I really had to dig it out. And then luckily, I had some brown caulking. I got that real quick and just filled up that hole like I never did it. I felt like Eddie Haskell or something, trying to hide hide the damages that I had done. But ultimately, my neighbor, he's not going to care. But I got to be careful here. I don't get too confused. So what I discovered off the cushion, was that I ignored my humanity. And I ignored everyone's humanity out in the world. The only one I cared about really was, I cared about God. I cared about my kids, of course. I cared about my teacher. But I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about anybody else. And there was this sense of just like looking out at the world and thinking that the world is bad, the world is a problem, the world is egoic. And one day I just realized, oh, I have a huge division, a huge attitude of almost, it's like almost hatred. Hatred would be too strong a word, but like more like a subtle disgust toward the world. Certainly, an very high degree of disgust toward my own self, my own humanity. And a lot of us, if we take on a monastic tradition, a monastic path, we can really hate ourselves. We can hate humanity. We can hate anything that's quote unquote an obstacle. But the problem with that type of teaching is, one, it doesn't work. Like, you're not going to get to God through hating life. Like, come on. Like, you're not gonna know love through hating life, right? Like, what kind of path are we on here? And so I came to realize, oh, I hate myself. What did Chris Farley say? I hate myself. I wish I was dead. It's like, I hate myself. And, I'd never said that out loud, but that was kind of like that feeling, the feeling of like, if Craig didn't exist, then Craig could be enlightened. Well, so it's like the egoic thought. And the truth is, as I began to learn to love the parts of me that were failures, like utter failures, like love the part of me that just shot that arrow in the fence. It's like, of course I love him. Of course I love him. And the part that, is scared and hurting, of course I'm going to love that part. The part that has crazy amounts of anger and rage, of course I'm going to love that part. And so I learned to really love all these, we'll call them unsavory aspects of my being. And I noticed that the more I loved myself, the more silent my mind became. It's a very funny thing. I wasn't expecting that. The more I loved myself, the more spacious my consciousness became. The more I loved myself, the more the walls and division within me fell away. The more they fell away. And I started to see, oh, through loving and accepting and forgiving this guy, like this guy for being human. The longer these spiritual states continued, the longer they were, I'm really butchering my words tonight, the more abiding they were. So let's say I had a big spiritual experience on the meditation cushion. And if I was kind to myself throughout the day, the experience would continue. If I was judgmental to myself throughout the day, if I hated myself, the experience would end. It's just real basic math. And it sounds really silly, just to say it out loud, but I just noticed it's like, oh, wow, the more I love myself, the more the kinder I am, the more willing I am to embrace that critic who was so hard on me for most of my life. the more willing I was to love the the alcoholic within me. Like, it's a funny thing. The more I loved the alcoholic, the less I wanted to drink. The more I hated the alcoholic, the more I wanted to drink. It was just a very interesting thing to discover, because I always thought when I was young, I'm just going to keep meditating. Like, I was just going to meditate my way to enlightenment. And what I found was something quite different. So the more I loved and included the ugly parts of my consciousness. And by included, I mean I include them in love, include them. Like the willingness to see them, to hear them, to sit with them, to feel their pain and their heartache. Through doing that, their walls and their division, their feeling of being abandoned and isolated, their feeling of being victimized fell away, fell away. And in that space was great peace and great love, great emptiness. And then to get back to Don's question, and then I discovered that when I looked out at the world, I was no longer judging the world. Like when I stopped judging myself, for some reason, I stopped judging the world. When I could look inside at my own ugliness and see it with loving compassion, the ugliness began to dissolve. And I began to see beauty there, even in places that had been quite ugly for a long time. And then as I began to look out at the world, like this beauty that I was seeing inside, I began to see it all around me. The more I saw my soul, the more I saw your soul. The more I saw my silly human mind and saw it just without judgment, but just saw it. I just witnessed it. Witness is too dry of a word. Like the more I compassionately, like, God, that sounds too flowery. but this kind of compassion, I mean, just like from a level of understanding, when I saw that my mind, like this human mind, was just suffering, and I could be with it in a loving way, not wanting it to be different, not fighting with it. And I began to see what the Buddha called the nature of the mind. And the Buddha spoke about this two different ways, like the nature of the human mind, and then the nature of, like awake, aware mind. I'm talking about the nature of human mind. So I started to see that the nature of the human mind, like everyone has it. Everyone has it. Like everyone has the same human mind. If you starve it a little bit, if it gets a little hangry, like it's going to be a little irritable. It's going to be a little grumpy. If it's stress-free, it's going to feel more relaxed and at ease. And so I saw that we all have the same mind. That's one of the things that makes my job really easy, is that when I look out at you, I see my own self. I hear my own self. And sometimes I hear my own self, sharing something quite beautiful and eloquent. And sometimes I hear myself saying something really confused. Like, I know that confusion because I've been so confused in this lifetime. I know pain because I've experienced so much pain in this lifetime. I know deep love because I've experienced deep love in this lifetime. I know great loss. And so when anyone is speaking to me, I know what they're speaking about. I know that experience directly because I've lived it. I've lived it. And so when you begin to see that we all have the same mind, like something really relaxes inside. And there begins to be this unifying recognition, a unifying recognition that humanity has the same mind and that our experience is not that different. It's not that different. And so that's one level. That's probably the most surface level. On a deeper level, the more you wake up, the more your personality begins to dissolve, begins to empty out. So the more you wake up, the more you see through the character of you. And we don't take it so seriously anymore. That aspect of us begins to fall away. And as it begins to fall away, there begins to be this recognition that that which is awake and aware in you is actually awake and aware in creation. In creation. Oh, the other morning, I was out and I was doing a little hunting. I was up in the mountains and I went for a little stroll in the mountains. And as a hiker, you always stay on the trail, but when you're hunting, you go off the trail. And I started to walk down a little game trail. So that's a trail that the bear uses and the elk use and the deer. And I was looking out at this big, beautiful world. And there's these snow-capped mountains, and the leaves are finally beginning to come on the trees. I was up pretty high. I was up like 9,000 or 10,000 feet, and so there's still little bits of snow up there, and the leaves haven't fully flourished just yet. But I was up there just walking, and there was just this feeling of the whole world, like the whole forest, the whole mountain, of everything being awake. So there's no longer Craig was awake and the world was asleep. It was the whole world was awake. I mean, the whole world is awake. And I look out just seeing beauty everywhere. Seeing beauty everywhere. And here I was, like, keep in mind, I'm hunting. And so it's like someone might get killed. Someone might get killed. For those of you who eat meat, even if you're a good vegan, we think vegans don't kill, but it's like you go into any farm, any organic farm, it's like all kinds of stuff gets killed in the name of farming. I'm not going to go too much into that. So I'm walking, and now my eyes are fully awake, my awareness is fully on. And I notice, oh, something's watching me. Something's watching me. And this recognition of, it's like, who's hunting who? This real non-dual recognition of the cycle of life, like, who is hunting who? What is it that we are? I look down on the ground, there's a big pile of bones at my feet, and I see myself in the bones. I see myself as the hunter. I see myself as the hunted. it's like something was coming after me. Something was coming after me. I scared a big cow elk, and it's like she was scared when she saw me, and then I was scared when I knew that something was coming for me. And so, it's an interesting thing. The more we wake up, we begin to see this unity. We begin to see our place. Our place. In the place of the other. And we see that they're not so different. That they're not so different. And so that was, just a funny experience, just going and being out in nature. Anytime like you're really out in nature, you go off the trail. And that's, a big thing that I'm going to invite here on this spiritual path, is for us to step off the trail and to see what is actually there. To see what is actually there. Like, we can read it in the book of, well, what does it mean to see yourself everywhere? Like, sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's terrifying. And again, that's just one perspective. So that's more of a cycle of life, perspective. You see, which one am I? Which one am I? Am I the one playing, or am I the one being played? Am I both? Am I both? But I think, whatever this question was referring to was probably speaking about a different type of experience. This type of experience that arises through loving oneself so fully and so completely, that a big aspect of your human self falls away. And then through facing the core wound of our egoic nature, the core wound that is terrified of being gobbled up by life, terrified of being hurt, harmed, mauled, whatever. And through facing our greatest fears, I discovered this funny thing, that the more fully you face your greatest fears, the more fully you face your greatest fears, then division falls away. There's something about facing fear there's something about facing fear. I apologize, my computer's making some noise here. There's something about facing fear, and beyond facing it, embracing it radically, like embracing the most terrifying feeling of being isolated or abandoned or rejected. That after we do this, that as we do this, the ability for you to feel separate radically begins to fall away. It radically begins to fall away. And so, again, this teaching, it really centers around a total willingness to embrace every aspect of oneself, the good, the bad, the ugly, the fearful, the part of us that is terrified, absolutely terrified. It's funny, like right in the core of the ego, it's like this abject terror. And I've always been kind of crazy. I was like, I want to know what that's about. Like, what's all this fear about? What is it really about? What is that abject terror about? Like, there's nothing here coming to get me, is there? Is there? Like, is there something here? And at first I said, oh, that's nonsense. There's nothing here. But as I began to open, I realized, oh no, there is something here. There is something here that's coming to get me. Like, there's something here that is coming to get me. I used to have this dream as a kid. I've told this a bunch, but I used to have this dream, a reoccurring dream. And it was like this mixed feeling of free falling through space, and at the same time being gobbled up, like being eaten alive by, it sounds silly, but by like 10 million earthworms. And for me, it wasn't snakes, it was earthworms. But being gobbled up, like every cell of my being being eaten alive. And I would have this dream over and over again as a child. And I'd wake up just like, just like so scared, so scared. And when I'd go back to sleep, that dream was right there again, right there, right there. And a lot of times, like, people will absolutely avoid silent retreats, avoid meditation retreats, because there can be this feeling that there is something enormous here that's going to eat me alive. Again, like some teachers talk about ego annihilation, ego death, and all this kind of silliness. I don't like that terminology. I want to go with earthworms. Earthworms. But just forever, there was this feeling that I was right on the edge of something just destroying me. And after a while, I just got tired of being scared of this thing. And many of you probably know this experience at some point, like when we've been on the path for a long time, you just kind of get tired of your own story. You get tired of your own fear. You get tired of your own confusion. You're like, I'm going to try something totally different. So instead of just like running from this fear, avoiding it, turning pale, it was like a common experience I had, turning pale, that kind of feeling. I said, what if I just join with this 100%? And I looked at God and I said, okay, you take me, gobble me up, gobble me up. And that's what happened. That's what happened. This thing came and it gobbled me up. It gobbled up this feeling of a separate, isolated, individual Craig. And it took him. And as it took him, when I looked out at the world, I began to see this thing that I am. This thing which is beyond fear, beyond separation, like beyond even the ability to separate. And so there's something that comes through a total embrace of one's life and one's humanity. Like if we do that in a successful way, after the fact, you begin to discover that it is very difficult to separate from the rest of life. And the direct experience of it is whatever this question is about. The direct experience of it is that you see yourself, your very self, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. So I look at the mountains, I see myself. I look at the sky, I see myself. But let's have some fun. Let's get dirty here. I see terrible aspects of human nature. I see myself. I see myself. I see people stealing. I see myself. I see, you know, people avoiding life, like let's have some fun. Like we have a pretty strong homeless crew here in Durango, just wants to just camp out in the park and do nothing and just like, I see myself. I see myself everywhere in the good, the beautiful, the terrible, the horrific. And when I talk to anyone, I feel like I'm just talking to myself. That's why I feel so comfortable speaking with anyone, because I see my own self. I not only see, it's an experience, it's a direct experience. And it's the opposite of any spiritual pride or spiritual clinging or reaching or grasping. It's this recognition that what you are is all of life, all of life. I've spoken about this, in a different avenue. Like when your hara and your root chakra really open up, you begin to experience that you are life. The hunter, the hunted, both and the creator, and the destroyer, and like you're the mountain and all the beautiful trees, and the forest fire, and that which was before the mountain, that which created the mountain, that which is the fire. To see yourself, to experience yourself as all of life. And this recognition comes through, of course, a willingness to be undivided. And most spiritual people, I mean, most humans, but just let's just talk about spiritual people, live in incredible division. I'm awake. You are not. It's just like division, just like ugly, nasty division. I'm awake. My mom is not. My mom drives me crazy. It's like, it's, it's just ugly, nasty division. And of course, we live in a world of individuals. We live in a world of separations, not really going to the human. So of course, like that's the normal way of being. It's me against you. That's the world we live in. But if you spend enough time on the spiritual path, you begin to discover, oh, it's not me against life. I am life. We are all life. But you yourself are the totality of life. And I know like that's a paradox. It doesn't sound right. You yourself are the totality of life. But I want to make it personal. I want this teaching to be felt in your heart that your nature is the totality of this world. And that's why, Jesus could say, the Father and I are one. And you could say this whole thing about the Son. And I mean, that whole thing gets a little bit confused. But any great being, when they wake up, there's some part of them, whether they express it or not, they realize that they are God. If you say that too loudly, of course, it might get you thrown in the loony bin. Probably not nailed to a cross in this day and age, but we'll just be put in the loony bin. Like we'll end up at the mental hospital, and we'll meet some new friends. We'll meet some new friends there. We'll meet some new friends there. We'll meet some new friends. You'll say, I am God. And the guy next to you will be like, me too. I am the Messiah. But the beautiful thing is, if we do this work, the way I'm describing of you loving yourself fully and completely, then there's this radical humility that comes with it. And we don't end up being David Koresh or some cult leader. There's this radical humility that balances it out. This recognition that I am God and I am nothing and I am everything. And everywhere, everything is a manifestation of my presence, of my essence, of my being. And when you live in this way, it's very hard to hold grudges. It's very hard to not forgive. It's very hard to look out at the world and say that person is evil. You might see that they're deeply confused. But of course, we're not judging them because we know that we have been deeply confused. We know that most of this world is deeply confused. And we know that it's not their fault, even though it is their fault, but it's not their fault. And all these aspects of the mind, that were very, boy, I cannot find my words today. I apologize. But in our mind, we have so many concrete, like solid ideas about how life is, how it should be, how it should not be. But the more you open to truth, the more you open to this world where division falls away, you see that it becomes very, very difficult to hold some concrete stance, some solid stance that this is the way, this is the one and only way, there's no other way. The Democrats have to rule the world. We have to protect ourselves from Trump. It's just like we stop thinking in those terms. And we can look at Donald and we can look at Joe. We can look at these two old crackers and see they're both just crackers. They're both just crackers. That's all they are. They're just two crackers. That's all they are. And it's okay that they're crackers. God has willed them to be crackers. I'm a cracker. It's just like you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere. You see yourself everywhere. You see God everywhere. And there's this great forgiveness is too active of a word, but I'm going to use a great forgiveness, this great recognition, this great understanding that this world is absolutely divine just as it is. And this world is growing in divinity just as it is. You no longer see, this immature spiritual idea. I'm on the path. They're not on the path. You see, everyone, all beings, not only are on the path, but are the path. There could be nothing but the path. And so, again, to make it a little bit more personal, when I meet with you, when I meet with my child, when I meet with my dog, I see my own self. The other day, my buddy's a sheriff, and I saw him I saw him rounding up someone the other day just at the bottom of my hill, and I saw myself as the sheriff, and I saw myself getting arrested. I saw myself as the crook, as the thief, and as justice. And I'm going to tell you something. This is a very confusing way to live. It's a very confusing way to live in this world. Because in this world, everyone is looking for your stance. Everyone wants to put you in a box. Are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? Like, which side of history are you going to be on? Do you believe in global warming? Do you not believe? Are you in or are you out? And I'm in and I'm out and I'm beyond in and out. And I'm wrong and I'm right. It's all of it. It's all of it. It's all of it. And again, I said this, I think of the Kundalini group. My wife, sometimes she looks at me and says, I don't know who you are. It's like, yeah, I don't know who this thing is either. Because this thing is always growing and changing and shifting and morphing. Like the most confusing one is when it morphs into a place where God doesn't exist, where nothing exists. It's just like, what, what is this? What is this experience? And it's all God, even the void, even the void. And so anyways, I hope there was something helpful there. I hope I answered that question somehow. Okay. Let me see. Here's a question from David Morris. Is devotional meditation something that is a choice, a tool for opening the heart, or is it more a result produced organically as the heart itself opens? Yeah, I think some people are wired for devotion. Like in the world of yoga, there's these, they call it the 8 limbs of yoga. One of them, of course, the bhakti yoga, is devotion. And I think there's just different paths to the divine. What I found is that there's all kinds of seasons. Like in the beginning, I was incredibly devotional. I was so devotional to my teacher, to God, and I listened to spiritual music all the time. And often, for many of us, as we realize more and more of these non-dual states and this non-division, it becomes very difficult to be devotional. It becomes very difficult to be devotional. But, for those of us like with a closed heart, sometimes devotion is an incredible doorway to connect with God, to connect to openness. Sometimes, like Dave is saying, like, no, does our heart have to be open first? It's like, not necessarily. Like I've known a lot of people on the path who've been very, very grumpy, very, very closed down and jaded. And then, you get them to like a Krishna Das concert or whatever, and all of a sudden the music breaks their heart open. And then they're singing along and they're open and they're deeply connected. And so, nothing is a choice. Like everything is written. And then, of course, everything's a choice. So I'm going to just like be very paradoxical today, very contradictory today. My sense is like whatever's working for you, like if devotion is working in this moment, continue with it. Continue with it. And sometimes if we're real grumpy on the path, it can be helpful to take on something a little bit more flowery, just to see if we can break down some of the layers of the heart, to break down some of the layers of the heart. I just want to say this. It's nice seeing you two girls together in this way, sharing in this way, just connecting in this way. It's nice seeing the two of you together. That's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I love it when people come together. And so thanks for making me smile. Yeah, yeah, good. Give each other a big hug. Okay, what was I saying? I was talking about devotional meditation. Like some of us, we really like if we're too dry of a Buddhist or too dry of a non-dual person, it can be very, very helpful to take on some devotion, to take on some sweetness, to try a path that maybe is different than what you normally do. And for me, I've studied so many different paths, and there's always something great I learned. Always something great. But ultimately, like you need to do what resonates with your heart. But a lot of people in the spiritual world, and again, like especially non-dual folks, they resonate with their jaded ego. that's not resonating. That's not resonating. Like they choose a path that just supports their ego. And like a good example of this is like so many cold-hearted individuals are really good at non-dual philosophy and dogma, and they're masters at spiritual bypassing. And like those individuals could use some asana yoga, could use some devotional yoga, some bhakti yoga, could use some love, could use some teachings on compassion, could use some teachings on tantra and going into the places that scare us. Those individuals could get in the mud a little bit more fully and see like I was one of those individuals. I was really good at being cold-hearted and meditative, but I needed to get in the mud a little bit. And as I got in the mud, things got real messy, but then things started to really flourish. They really began to flourish. Okay. Let's see, I think there's something else that was written. Can you speak about why it is scary to experience all of life as myself? Yes, so for most people, the doorway into it is that experience I was talking about, that experience of being gobbled up. Like most of us, we've developed an individual consciousness, and our individual consciousness can protect us from mom and dad, like when mom and dad are being crazy. And so it learns to shut down, it learns to put up walls, it learns to guard. We're not really protecting ourselves when we're doing that, but we think we're protecting ourselves, like the ego thinks it's protecting itself. And so for most of us, we like the fact that we can protect ourselves through egoic walls. And the doorway into this thing that I'm speaking about tonight is fully letting go of your personal sense of self and no longer having any walls. And the price of admission into the space is a total willingness to feel everything. A total willingness to feel everything. A willingness to feel everything. And we are hardwired to avoid feeling everything. It's like, oh my gosh, it's too much. And there is like a little bit of psychology here. Like as a little kid, if a little child feels everything in their environment, there's this danger that can happen where the kid, the child's psyche will split, and then the child will become schizophrenic. And so there's this hardwired protection into our ego that says, don't let yourself feel and experience everything. Because if we do so, we'll be overwhelmed. And if we're overwhelmed, we might go crazy. We might go crazy. And, like if you ever meet someone who's, let's say, again, I'm not being polite tonight, but who's crazy, like to be really crazy means that your psyche has split. And then you have these different parts of yourself. I've been speaking about these parts for a little bit now, so I'll just speak a little more. And these parts tend to sabotage and seduce, and sabotage and seduce, and sabotage more and destroy things, and open up and merge with things, and then say, oh, it's too much. And so now I have to split and I have to fight. And again, it could be this whole psychological dance. And I don't want to get too much into it because I could spend the whole night talking about that. But so there's a little switch inside that says, hey, don't open up and feel too much because you might be overwhelmed and your psyche might split. You might go crazy. Now, the good news is we only really need to be concerned about that between like ages 0 and 18, maybe 0 and 24. But really 0 and 18, and like probably really 0 and like 16. And if you can get through 0 and 16 by not being too overwhelmed and the psyche not splitting, then afterwards it's not such a big deal. Like there's zero chance. Let's not say zero, but let's say it's highly improbable that as adults, if you open to the divine, that you'll go crazy, that your psyche will split and you'll become schizophrenic. But let's say if you're between 0 and let's say 13, and you start to see yourself as your sister, as your brother, as your mother, as your father, as the sky, as everything, that's really going to mess with your human development. And things might get a little nutty. Might get a little nutty, might get a little confusing, might get a little confused. And I've actually had some good friends, like as a kid, who it's like dangerous for little kids to do psychedelics. It's like it's not the right thing for them. It's not the right thing for them. But sometimes, like with some of us, myself included, if you're a really strong soul and God does come into you and gobbles you up, like if you have a healthy amount of faith and you trust in the divine, you see it as a good thing, then we can go in with a lot less fear. Like me, I wanted to be gobbled up by God. I kind of like smiled and said, okay, like let's see what happens. And there were some voices in my ego that said, oh my God, I'm going crazy, 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 I'm going crazy. And then I just stopped saying I'm going crazy. And I just looked around and I realized I'm not crazy, I'm really clear. I'm really clear. This is really clear. The I that's confused, he was the one that got gobbled up. And so often on the spiritual path, people get confused about what it means to surrender. Surrender is a great thing. You only are giving away things that don't work for you. So if you struggle with fear, we surrender the one who's fearful. Then you become fearless. But a lot of people are like, nope, 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 nope. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to hold on to my fear. And I think that's somehow going to protect me. And, it doesn't protect you. It, again, I'll be rude. It ruins your life. Like if you hold on to fear, it doesn't protect you. It ruins your life. Let's play with control. So if we surrender control, and you open and you discover that what you are is uncontrolled. Uncontrolled. Like when you look out at life, like the hugeness of life, see the hugeness of life is uncontrolled. Like a spiritual word for that would be unbounded, right? Unbound, not bound. It's not in a box. It's uncontained. And a more beautiful word is it's ineffable. Ineffable. It's like indescribable. Doesn't fit in any box. But if you want to be controlled, you can definitely describe all kinds of things. You can put things in a box. You can say, these are the good people. These are the Democrats. They're the good people. These are the good people. The Republicans, they're the bad people. They're so bad. Sorry. I'm sorry. Uh, it's this willingness. Blair, if you want to know, like, well, why is it scary to experience all of life as myself? Because the ego is hardwired to resist that, because the ego will lose itself. But it's like, well, what happens if the ego is lost, is dissolved? Will you be okay? Like, you won't know until you jump off the bridge. And you see, am I okay? Am I okay if all of life gobbles me up? Am I okay? Am I okay? You might discover that okayness is happening. For a lot of people, when they first have this experience, again, it is terrifying. It's a terrifying thing as you open. If you just keep open, if you keep going with it, you just keep going with it, you realize, oh, I'm no longer worried about the I being okay. I recognize that life is okay. That okayness is life. And yeah, I might die. Like, I might die right now or in 60 years. And who knows? But I'm not going back into that ego that thinks it's protecting me from something that can't be protected. And so at some point, Blair, we get tired of being scared. We give up on being scared. We give up on that voice that says, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. And we just say something crazy like, well, let's just see. Let's just see what happens if I keep opening into this fear. And the ego will say all kinds of things. I'm going to die. I'll be annihilated. No one dies from spiritual awakening. You get the opposite. You get what those Christians talk about. You're born again. But this time you're born into the recognition that you are all of life. All of life is you. All of life is everywhere. Everyone, everything is all of life. And so I'm going to invite you to look. So let's all do this. Let's all close our eyes. And we'll just look inside. What is your edge? What's the cliff within you? The great fear. And can you open to this immensity? And can you open more? And open more? And open more? And open more? And keep opening to there's no longer any division. There's no longer any fear. No longer any more terror, any I need to control. Gate, gate, gate. Par gate, par gate. Parasam gate. Open, open, open. Forevermore. So lovely to be with all of you. Good night, everyone. Be well.